Today starts a long 24-hour journey for some of the best sports car racing teams across the planet. Plenty of drivers, men and women, racing daytime and under the lights at Daytona International Speedway. At the end, one will emerge victorious, take home the title of champion of the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. Welcome to our GRID Network live pre-race of the Rolex 24.
Welcome to the Rolex 24 at Daytona pre-race show, one of the first major motorsport events of 2021 in North America. A star-studded field of drivers with experience in Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, and Formula E, plus the regulars from IMSA and the FIA World Endurance Championship. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. Very excited to have you join us today. I invite you to tune in to our featured programs. We'll have IMSA Pre-Race shows throughout the 2021 season. With me, I have Samaniego and a special guest. She is a performance driving instructor, raced in the Porsche Trophy West Series in 2020, competed in the SRO Sprint X Championship with Flying Lizard Motorsports, followed in the McLaren 720S GT4, and in 2018, she finished fourth in the NASA 25 Hours of Thunderhill. Distinguished guest, please join me in welcoming Erin Vogel. Erin, how are you doing today, and how excited are you for the start of the 2021 racing season?
Hi, Kobe. I'm doing really well today, and I am so excited for the 2021 racing season to start. I think we're all ready for that. And of course, the most exciting event happens first thing in the year. So I think that just helps build and set the tone for the whole season.
Yeah, and we're very excited to have you on the program today. Very excited about the race. And we'll kick off our program with Joe, who has some general information about the Rolex 24 at Daytona.
Thank you, Kobe. Very excited to be here. Very excited to have everyone join us in the chat room. Tell us in the chat room, who do you think is going to win the race? We definitely want to hear from you. It's going to be a really exciting day. Kobe, I can only imagine you're pretty excited about everything as well.
Yes, Joe. I'm very excited about this year's Rolex 24 as I am every year. Because it's a long race, obviously 24 hours, and I usually spend on average between 13 and 16 hours on this race. I'd love to do all 24, but that's not really possible because I need my beauty sleep. But overall, in my opinion, the Rolex 24 is one of the truest all-star events out there, because as I mentioned, you see drivers coming from all disciplines, open wheel, stock car, and from many sports car racing series all over the world. And before you start talking about a little bit more of the race, Joe, I want to correct something I said. I misspoke when I said the McLaren was the 720S GT4. It's actually the 570S, not the 720S, which is actually the McLaren GT3 car.
I know we're all very excited. 24 hours of Daytona, first major race here in the United States for 2021. Definitely, of course, this race, a lot of history. The first 24 hours of Daytona, a lot of folks will look back to 1962. Of course, that was a little different. That was originally a 3-hour sports car race. So a 3-hour sports car race at Daytona International Speedway back in 1962. That's only a few years after the racetrack opened in 1959. The first 24 hours of Daytona, 1966. Won by Ken Miles and Lloyd Ruby. Of course, many folks recognize Ken Miles' name because of the movie Ford versus Ferrari in 2019. 1975, IMSA replaced Sports Car Club of America as the sanctioning body of the race. Porsche leased constructors and engines with wins with 18 and 22 respectively. Hurley Haywood and Scott Pruitt are the drivers with the most wins in the 24 hours of Daytona. Each of them has 5 wins total. This race, of course, is much younger compared to the great race, the Le Mans 24 hours. Erin, for sports car racers, how big is the Rolex 24 hours, especially for racers here at the United States?
It's such a big race, Joe. It's just such an exciting thing. You know, it's at an iconic track. It's in a beautiful setting in Florida, and it's just, you know, one of the it's such a great big race to kick off the season. It usually draws really great fields. Typically in a normal year, it would draw really great crowds as well, crowds of fans. And there's so much excitement somehow, in kicking off the racing season. And so to have a big event like Daytona be the first race with so many different classes, so many different races going on, so many different series involved, it's something that really has so much excitement and flair about it. And I think that's why it's such a big event.
It is a big event. Now, Kobe, for you, especially, you've been following IMSA. Does it appear that the Rolex 24 Hours is growing in popularity, especially with hypercar development and more big names entering the race year after year?
Yes, most definitely, Joe. I'm very excited for the future of the Rolex 24 at Daytona, and not just that, and not just IMSA, but sports car racing in general. You mentioned all of the developments with the Le Mans Hypercar and LMDH programs coming on board. It's gonna be really exciting. We know Toyota is debuting their hypercar this year. Also, Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus as well in the World Endurance Championship. We're gonna have Peugeot coming back with a hypercar, and we're gonna have right now 3 LMDH programs have been announced. Audi, Porsche, and Acura recently confirmed programs to race in LMDH, and so definitely on the prototype front is definitely going to be a lot of excitement moving forward with potential manufacturers joining. We haven't heard anything from General Motors with Cadillac or Mazda yet, but I'm sure we're definitely going to hear something about them within the foreseeable future. And also the big announcement that GTLM would be discontinued after this season, and then next year we're going to see a GT3 Pro class and a GT3 AM class in IMSA, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of strong all pro GT3 Pro driver lineups and a lot of manufacturers that are going to be running for top honors in the GT class.
A lot of teams running for top honors in the GT class, and that's something else that's going to be really exciting to see GT Pro coming up next year. Now, definitely, of course, this track, 12 turns, 3.56 miles, is truly unique. Not seen in any other sports car event in the world. It uses the 31 degrees banking on the super speedway. So, of course, the super speedway, famous for the Daytona 500, NASCAR. When it comes to sports car racing, there's no other event that has banking like this and such a huge amount of time. Turns 1, turn 2, and 3 and 4 in the super speedway are all used. Of course, before you go to those corners, you go through the infield section and, of course, the bus stop. The bus stop, really tricky at times. We've seen vehicles lose control entering there. The speedway will operate under reduced lighting capacity. So the NASCAR events, they run in full lighting capacity because those vehicles don't have headlights. Here, sports cars, they do have headlights, and that infield section is much darker. Now, compared to the 24 Hours of Le Mans, it is a shorter distance per lap, and of course, a shorter lap times, but more darkness. The 24 Hours of Le Mans runs in June closer to the summer solstice, whereas here at Daytona, we're at the end of January. We just passed winter solstice, so we're starting to get in there, but still a lot more darkness compared to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Daytona is a purpose-built racing facility. Le Mans uses public roads, and the 12 Hours of Sebring is on the old airfield. Erin, when it comes to racing, and especially 24 hours at Daytona, how big of a challenge is it for the teams, engineers, and the mechanics that no other event presents?
Well, I mean, every event presents its own challenges. As you mentioned, some of the courses are not purpose-built, which can be very challenging. But Daytona, being that it is a purpose-built racetrack, has the banked oval, and that alone presents some really great challenges for the engineers. There's a lot of more tire wear on the outside tires, particularly the right rear tire. That's where you most often would see a failure. So there's a lot that the engineers have to do to set up the car around that, to plan, to save that tire as much as possible, to not overwork that tire. Same with the drivers; they have to be very cognizant of that. But you also can't plan the whole car around the banking because it has an infield. So you're turning left and right. You're turning, with camber and without camber. So there are a lot of things that have to be considered to get a really good setup on a car for a race like this. And the same with the mechanics. They have to be really diligent with the long race, that they're keeping an eye on things as much as possible. It's hard to. They don't have a lot of time when the cars come into the pits, but it takes really trained eye to spot something that could be a problem. Most of it comes down to the drivers and the driver feedback that they can give over the radio if they start to feel something in the car. And then the mechanic team and the engineers, they have to try to translate from what they're feeling, and try to understand what the problem might be, so that the next time the car comes into the pit box, they can quickly evaluate what's going on, whether it's something in the suspension or whether it's a tire. So there are just a lot of unique challenges in a 24-hour race that, you don't see in a shorter race quite so much. It's just a lot of hours to put on a car and a lot of stress to put on the moving pieces over and over for 24 hours straight.
Indeed, all the stresses for 24 hours straight. And now we'll turn to Kobe with some of the drivers that are going to be in this 24-hour event.
And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Joe, the Rolex 24 Daytona is often labeled as an all-star event, which attracts drivers from multiple disciplines, such as NASCAR. We have the 7-time champ Jimmy Johnson in the show with Action Express Racing, in the number 48 Allied Financial Cadillac DPI. Also in the other Action Express Cadillac, the number 31 Whelen Engineering entry, we have reigning NASCAR Cup Series champion Chase Elliott. I'm sure a lot of NASCAR fans and Chase Elliott fans are excited to see him make his debut in the twice around the clock Florida endurance class. And we have a Daytona 500, a former Daytona 500 winner in the field, Austin Dillon, who's going to be in LMP2 with Rick Ware Racing Eurasia, and AJ Allmendinger in the number 60 Meyer Shank Racing, and Cody Ware are going to be driving for his father's team, Rick Ware Racing, in LMP2 as a teammate to Austin Dillon. And from IndyCar, we have the legend Scott Dixon himself with Ganassi, Sebastian Bourdais in the Mustang sampling car, Alexander Rossi, Wayne Taylor Racing Acura, Simon Pagenaud, teammate to 7-time NASCAR champ Jimmy Johnson. Renus VK going to be driving for Dragon Speed and LMP2. Colton Herta in GTD this year with Turner Motorsport. And recently announced Doe Corn Racing IndyCar driver Ed Jones is going to be with Scuderia Corsa. And coming from the world of Formula One, ex-Haas F1 driver Kevin Magnussen is going to be making his IMSA debut today with Chip Ganassi Racing. Also in LMP2, we have Robert Kubica, and the lone Formula E driver in the field is Alexander Sims. We also have drivers from other series such as DTM, the FIA World Endurance Championship, the European Le Mans Series, and many more series all around the world. Joe, why does the Rolex 24 always attract such high-caliber drivers each year? And it just seems like the driver lineups keep getting stronger.
They do seem to keep getting stronger, and the challenge of the 24 hours of Daytona, I think, is a big draw, using the super speedway corners, the infield section. And then this event, just like any other event, as it keeps going year after year, it's building that name bigger and bigger. And sports car racing, especially we know the upcoming hypercar programs, you could race Le Mans, you could race here. If you want to enter racing, this is a good platform to get involved. Sports car racing. And then you look at some of the names of the past winners here. I mean, Andretti, Floyd, some of the best from around the world. Fernando Alonso comes to mind. Some of the great IndyCar drivers that comes to mind. A lot of great drivers have won this race. They want to be part of this great event as well, and hopefully put their name as a winner of the Rolex 24 hours.
And on our previous shows, we've discussed the possibility of more NASCAR drivers entering the Rolex 24 to practice their road course racing skills and prepare for the Daytona road course the week after the Daytona 500. As I mentioned, Chase Elliott, Austin Dillon, AJ Allmendinger, and Cody Ware are the only drivers who'll be running the Rolex 24 and the Cup race on the same layout minus the chicane off NASCAR 4. Are you surprised that we didn't see more NASCAR drivers enter the Rolex 24 this year, or will there be an uptick in several years as we get into the new era of more road course racing in NASCAR?
You bring up a really good point, especially this year with NASCAR. They have a lot more road courses, so we anticipate more. We're seeing a good number. I know for Austin Dillon, he missed this race, the Daytona road course last year. It's going to be the second race of NASCAR, so this is a really good opportunity for him to get laps, especially in that infield section. One of the big things, of course, going forward for sports car racing, and especially with this event, I think it's going to draw even more as we see the hypercars, as we see series like NASCAR add more road courses. I think as IndyCar grows in popularity, we see Chip Ganassi Racing involvement here. We've seen Penske's been involved with this event in the past as well. I just see the potential for this event to really start gaining a lot more attention from owners around the world, drivers around the world. And as they get the sports car experience, this is going to become a really big event.
Yeah. And since in the next few years, we're going to have a common prototype platform and a common GTD class soon. So I think it's really going to open the door to have more entries all throughout the field, and that might give more opportunities for NASCAR drivers to come on board. Yes, I'm a little bit surprised when to see more NASCAR drivers enter the Rolex 24 this year, but I think as the years goes on in the 2020s decade, I do think we'll see more NASCAR drivers join, because we're going to be seeing a lot more road course races in NASCAR, and for the drivers to be able to get more experience on road courses to help with our NASCAR program. It definitely can't hurt. And he brought up a good point about Austin Dillon. When he tested positive for the virus, he couldn't race at the Daytona road course. So if he wasn't competing in this race, he wouldn't have any opportunity to practice the course. It's not going to be that much different, as I mentioned. But the only difference with the layout is going to be the chicane off of NASCAR 4 to slow down the stock cars. So I think that it's definitely going to be an eye-opening experience for Austin Dillon. So Erin, how different is the mindset behind the wheel when it comes to a sprint race versus a 24-hour endurance race?
It's a totally different mindset, Kobe. When you are thinking about a sprint race, you're just thinking about driving as hard as you can for the entire race and doing everything you can to stay up front. But in a 24-hour race, the strategy is very different. You don't want to fall back. You want to stay up front if you can, but not at the expense of the tires. The tires in the car in general, but the tires particularly are something that you just have to be very mindful of. You can't treat them harshly. You may be in a situation where not only are you running a tire for a single, whole hour long stint, as opposed to, a lot of sprint races are only anywhere from 20 to 25 to 45 minutes. So you're already running 60 minutes on a tire, and then you may actually be asked to double stint a tire where you're running that same tire for another hour stint. You may come into the pits just to pick up fuel and not get tires. So the mindset's just very different in terms of, managing the tire, managing the car, making sure that the car, you can't be too hard on the car either. You don't want to bend the suspension. It happens sometimes, but you want to be as gentle on everything as you can, just so that the car and the tires will make it as long as possible. You want the car to last to the end, and the tires, you want to get, as much good life out of them as possible. So it's just, it's a much calmer, long, like a long view kind of a mindset, rather than just kind of going, 100% right out of the gate.
Well, Erin, that was an interesting perspective right there. Really terrific insight. And I know in recent years, a lot of people have said that the Rolex 24 at Daytona has turned into a 24-hour sprint race because these drivers are on it from the drop of the green flag on Saturday afternoon to the checker flag 24 hours later on Sunday afternoon. And we all know you can certainly lose this race in the very first hour if you're pushing too hard and get into an accident and the car it's impossible to repair it. So definitely the drivers will want to pace themselves and make sure that they're not going to put their team in a difficult situation. And when it comes down to the strategy of hitting minimum drive time for each driver and setting a rotation with multiple co-drivers, can you explain what goes into that process?
Yeah, that's so much of it. The strategy is such a large part of the race. Part of the strategy is tires, but a lot of the strategy is how you place your drivers. Certain drivers may have different strengths. As we talked about, as the race draws drivers from all different types of motorsport, from NASCAR and IndyCar, not just sports cars. So there's drivers coming in that have more experience in different disciplines, not necessarily in a 24-hour race type situation. So you might want to, certain drivers might have, might really be strong on a race start. So you might place them first. And you want to try to get some of the minimum drive times out of the way early on in the race because you don't know what's going to happen later. Sometimes your strategy has to change. Something can happen, and a driver, isn't able to do a stint that was originally planned at a certain time, and you might have to change the driver rotation. You try not to have that happen, but sometimes, a driver gets sick. For instance, when we did the 25 hours of Thunder Hill, one of our drivers had a really long yellow flag, and when they were in that train behind the safety car for it was, I don't know, maybe an hour-long yellow while they were, I think, cleaning up an accident. And we, when the green flag came out again, she didn't realize she'd gotten some carbon dioxide poisoning and actually got physically ill and had to pit the car after only like one lap. So sometimes things like that happen. You have to be flexible. You have to have drivers ready to come on board if something like that happens. Certain drivers, of course, also have better skills in the rain or in the dark. So depending on what the weather decides to do, that might affect the strategy when you want to place a driver in the car. So their teams are constantly watching the weather apps and watching the radar if there's planned weather that they think is going to be coming. So that will definitely affect if there's someone that's strong in the rain, they'll hold off putting them in the car until they think the rain's going to come, and they'll rotate some of their other drivers through while they have the dry weather. So there's a lot of strategy involved. There's really no one right way to do it. It's just a moving target, and that's why the strategists in this are so important, and they're so skilled at what they do. That makes the race really fun to watch.
It really seems like a go with the flow type of situation because you don't know what's going to expect. Because as we know, every race is different in the circumstances. Like some years the Rolex 24 is torrential downpour. Remember a few years ago when they had to call the race a little early because it was just treacherous conditions out there. Drivers were sliding all off the course. And another thing that I'm always looking after in these 24-hour races are the program classes. Like then we're going to have LMP2, LMP3, and GTD. And when sports car racing, we have the FIA driver. The driver rankings and all of that. Whether you're going to be bronze, silver, gold, or platinum, in those pro-am classes, at some point in the race, you're going to want to get your silver or bronze rated driver their drive time in earlier, so you can put the drivers who might be a little bit faster than those bronze and silver drivers in when it matters. I'm sure those teams will definitely want their fastest driver in at the very end for the final stretch before the checkered flag.
You want to have a strong driver at the finish. Someone that maybe needs to be able to push a little, depending on where you are. If you have a chance to get up into, onto the podium, you definitely want a driver that can get you there. So you want to keep, one of those drivers, if you can, fresh for the end, to put them in and really make that final push to the finish line.
Great insight from you guys. Definitely one of the big things, of course, of Rolex 24 Hours, a lot of storylines that we're going to be following. So, Kobe, I know last weekend we ended the roar before the 24 with qualifying races. That led to a bunch of mixed opinions. Some fans saw the race as great appetizer for the 2021 season, while others felt it was unnecessary. We even had drivers accusing other drivers of sandbagging. Now, for fans not familiar, the term sandbagging is used when a team is not showing their 100% potential of their car and driver combination, trying to save a little surprise for the race itself. Should IMSA bring back qualifying in 2022?
In my honest opinion, I don't think they should bring back the qualifying race. Yes, I believe it's a great appetizer, especially after a long off season to finally get some racing. But I just don't see the need of a qualifying race because there's really no reason to go out there and push 100% because qualifying does not matter in a 24-hour race at all. And if people want to see a qualifying race, in a few weeks' time, we'll see the Daytona duels under the lights for when NASCAR returns to action.
You bring up a good point. Essentially, it's a long 24-hour race, so a lot of time can happen between the event. Now, Coach, Acura will stay in IMSA for the foreseeable future, announcing they are going to be part of the LMDH program that will start in 2023. Acura is the third manufacturer to commit to LMDH, joining Audi and Porsche. With two current DPI manufacturers left to commit, will GM and Mazda join the new era of prototype racing?
Well, Joe. I think it's a little too soon to say if we'll see them in the LMDH era, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we will see them in IMSA in the next era in somewhere, some form. I know there's been some articles out there about General Motors evaluating the LMDH platform. Maybe we'll see them stick with Cadillac or even go back to Corvette and prototype racing. And I do think in the next few months we will hear something from Mazda, and it would definitely be great if we have them stay on board as well, so we get more manufacturers joining the new era of prototype racing.
Now, speaking about something new, a couple days ago, IMSA announced that GTLM will be discontinued at the end of 2021 season. To replace GTLM, we'll see GT Pro using the FIA GT3 like today's GTD class, but allow factory teams and all pro lineups. We have a GT Pro and a GT AM class. This move shouldn't be a surprise because GTLM is down to 3 full-time cars, and WEC only has 4 in the same GTE platform. In 2022, new FIA GT3 regulations will be introduced. Good time for IMSA to start fresh, with IMSA introducing a new factory GT3 class as a GTE continues to fall apart. Will the WEC make a similar move?
I'm not sure if they're going to make a similar move, but there's a saying in sports car racing is that the market will predict the future, and right now the market's not great for GTE Pro racing and GTLM, and I think IMSA made the right move. Although it's hard, GTLM's produced some great racing over the years, but right now I think the platform has just really run its course, and it's time to move on to something more affordable and better. And I do think that this was the best move for us to make, to have a GTD Pro and a GTDM class. I'm sure we're going to see some exciting driver lineups next year.
Definitely has to be very exciting. Now, one of the big things yesterday, United Autosports announced they'll enter an Orica 07 Gibson in the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring race with Jim McGuire, Wayne Boyd, and Guy Smith. Another European LMP2 is coming over to race in IMSA as well. We've seen a few other teams compete, the Rolex 24, and now United Autosports is committed to Sebring. Why so many LMP2 teams from WEC are now entering essentially IMSA endurance races?
Well, actually, Joe, I think it's a glimpse into the future where we're going to see a lot more crossovers from series, because I remember a few years ago it was like really hard to get this many teams from the World Endurance Championship to enter IMSA races, and I think it's just a great sight for the future, when we're going to have a lot more common regulations, especially with LMDH and Le Mans Hypercar coming on board, and then especially if the World Endurance Championship is going to switch potentially to GT3, then there'll be a link there. And LMP2, you can already race LMP2 in IMSA and the WC, European Le Mans Series, Asian Le Mans Series, all of that. And I just think that we're going to start seeing a lot more teams from the World Endurance Championship enter these IMSA endurance races. And maybe we'll see some IMSA teams enter their races as well.
Now, we encourage everyone, definitely in the chat room, all our viewers, be sure to participate in the chat room. We'll love to hear your questions, answer your questions on the air, share your comments and thoughts as well. Definitely encourage everyone to do so. Now, Kobe, when it comes to electric racing in the future, yesterday, Augustus Farfus ran some laps at Daytona in a new Hyundai ETCR car. Hard to remember that. At the very beginning of its life cycle, it's a pure ETCR series set to debut in the future. There's talk that we could see eventually some electric vehicle races in IMSA someday. This comes after GM, General Motors, said they plan to go all electric by 2035. Is a future switch to all electric racing inevitable?
I know a lot of fans are going to really hate me for saying this, but in the future, we're definitely going to see all electric racing. It's definitely going to happen at probably at some point in our lifetimes, Joe. And a lot of people, I know they've always pushed back against all electric racing, but the world is changing, and electric racing is going to be the future. And I say for now, just enjoy what we have now and worry about the future many years down the road. But this is something that's definitely going to happen down the road, whether people like it or not.
I have to agree. I do see where electric racing is going to take over most of the motorsport series. We may still see some petrol vehicles here and there, maybe one or two, but I do think some of the bigger names will go over to electric car racing. Now, of course, one of the big things, we got a lot of classes, and I definitely want to give a shout out to Alyssa, one of our viewers, she also agrees with you as well, Cody, that we're going to see a lot more electric racing in the future. But now to discuss some of the cars that we're going to see today, here's Kobe with all the classes in the Rolex 24.
Yeah, before we start talking about the class, I want to give a quick shout out to my friend Alyssa, one of my awesome friends from UNC Charlotte. Really glad I've been able to get you into racing. I hope you stay with the motorsports world for the foreseeable future, because it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. And this year we have 5 classes instead of 4, with the addition of the LMP3 class, a 49 car field this year. We originally had 50 cars set for race, but Tim Pappas, the owner of Black Swan Racing, was forced to withdraw his GTD Porsche after testing positive for COVID-19. And starting at the top of the grid with the DPI cars, we have 7 prototypes going for overall honors: 4 Cadillacs, 2 Acuras, and a Mazda. Definitely strong driver lineups, with Action Express Racing filled in 2 entries, the number 31 Wheeling Engineering entry with full season drivers Pippo Durrani and Felipe Nasr, Mike Conway, the endurance driver and reigning NASCAR Cup Series champion, Chase Elliott joining them, an all-star driver lineup in the number 48 Cadillac with sponsorship from Ally, Kamui Kobayashi, Simon Pagano, Mike Rockenfeller, Rocky, Jimmy Johnson sharing that car. The JDC Miller Motorsports Mustang Sampling Cadillac features an all-French trio of Sebastien Bourdais, Lloyd Duval, and Tristan Vautier. And Chip Ganassi Racing returns to IMSA action with a Cadillac, bringing in experienced Cadillac driver Ringer van der Zande to lead the charge, with ex-Haas F1 driver Kevin Magnussen joining him for the season-long championship. Scott Dixon is in for the endurance races, and fellow IndyCar driver Marcus Ericsson is a reserve driver in case something were to happen to one of his drivers. Joe, out of the entire Cadillac stable, who has the upper hand?
I think the upper hand has to go to the more experienced team. So definitely when it comes to the more experienced team, I got to go at essentially Simon Pagano, Mike Rockefeller, Kamui Kobayashi. They know how to do endurance racing. Jimmy Johnson, okay, this is going to be one of his first endurance races, but he's been practicing for this. He's been preparing for this. Yes, he's a little bit in a slower speed, going to be starting out the race, but I think the experience, especially with Kamui there, I see them going to be the team to essentially beat. Some of the other teams, I mean, it's so competitive. It's just really hard, but I see their experience is going to be some of the big advantage they have.
Yeah, definitely experience is going to be key, and it's going to be interesting to see how Jimmy Johnson does his race. You mentioned he's a little bit slower than some of the other DPI drivers, but every time we get in the car, he's gotten a lot closer, and since he'll be in the car a lot more during the Rolex 24, I think Jimmy's definitely going to be right in the ballpark and be competitive in that number 48 Ally Financial Cadillac DPI. That's definitely one of the teams to watch. And you also don't want to discount the experience of the number 31 Wheeling Engineering car with Durrani, Nasr, and Conway, and then Chase Elliott, his very first endurance race. It's going to be interesting to see how the reigning NASCAR champion does in his sports car racing debut. And looking at the rest of the DPI field, we have 2 Acuras, but no Acura Team Penske anymore. We might see them down the road in the future, potentially with another manufacturer. And we do have a pair of customer teams this year instead. So we're still going to have 2 Acuras. We have Wayne Taylor Racing and Meyer Shank Racing. And starting with the number 10 Konica Minolta Acura DPI, Ricky Taylor returned to his father's team and teams up with Felipe Albuquerque for the championship. Ricky's teammate from Acura Team Penske, Helio Castroneves, joins the team for this race only, and IndyCar driver Alexander Rossi is going to be in for the Enduros. And definitely after a dismal 2020 season, Alexander Rossi is looking to kick off his year in a positive direction, which hopefully leads to a better IndyCar season for him. And then number 60, Acura has a solid team consisting of former Penske DPI drivers Dane Cameron and Juan Pablo Montoya, then Olivier Pla and AJ Allmendinger. Finally, a single Mazda with 3 drivers from last year, Oliver Jarvis, Harry Ticknell, and Jonathan Bomarito. Since the start of the DPI era, Cadillac has won every single Rolex 24 overall since 2017. Do you think Acura or Mazda can take the fight to Cadillac this year, or is it just going to be another Cadillac domination?
Looks like it might be another Cadillac domination, as we've seen in the past. The big thing I feel, we saw how a lot of times if there's bad luck, the Mazdas are going to be right there. Acura could be right there too. I know there's a lot of fans there. They're going to be rooting for Acura, Mazdas, of course. Brand loyalty is still there. But I think unless we see we've seen in the past mechanical issues that cross teams and hit one manufacturer. Unless something goes wrong with all the Cadillacs, I anticipate we're going to see a Cadillac in victory lane today. Well, tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow, 24 hours, not sprint race, Joe. But yeah, I do think we're gonna see a Cadillac in victory lane. But it would not surprise me if we see Mazda or Acura in the conversation as well. Cause I think they're gonna be strong. And now looking at the LMP2 class, we've seen significant improvement for the category, expanding to 10 cars for the Rolex 24 this year in comparison to 4 last season. It should be very competitive, mixing in the IMSA P2 teams with the WEC P2 teams, making the trip across the pond. And some of those teams are high class racing, led by Alfa Romeo F1 test driver Robert Kubica and Ferdinand Habsburg, who spent the 2020 season in DTM with Kubica. The Jumbo Supermarket number 29 is a livery that you cannot miss. And they have ex Formula One driver Gito Vandegarde making his Rolex 24 debut. C Dallara racing the Italian team brought over the Dallara LMP2 for the very first time in IMSA competition. Eurasia partners with American team Rick Ware Racing to fill the LMP2 class's only Ligier chassis. Of course, we have Dragon Speed trying to defend its class win from last year, and they have 2 cars in the field. Who'll be on top after 24 hours in IMSA or WEC P2 team?
Excuse me, I was muted. Definitely when it comes to who's going to be on the top, I have to look towards the LMP2 teams from IMSA. They've done this race. WEC team, no doubt they could pull off a win easily. I mean, they're from WEC. But I feel like with IMSA, they just might have that little bit of extra knowledge, extra experience at Daytona to pull off a victory in the class.
Yeah, definitely those IMSA teams who have done this race many times before. They're certainly they're gonna have the notebook and the experience I have. But I'm actually gonna go the opposite of you here, and I'm gonna say that a WEC team is going to win. I'm actually gonna go with the number 29 Racing Team Netherlands squad that has Gito Vandegarde. I think that team has looked very impressive so far, so I'm gonna go with them to win the LMP2 class. And with a 10-car LMP2 field, do you expect to see a very competitive race here?
I do anticipate a competitive field. It's going to be really close between them. I mean, the WEC teams, they're all top level. IMSA teams, of course, they're all top level. When it comes to the two of them racing each other, it's going to be really fun to watch. And I think it's going to be one of the more exciting classes to watch. I'm still betting, though, I think that we're going to see an IMSA team in victory lane tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'm sure when we come back to recap the race on Wednesday Grid tonight, we'll see which one of us are right. You're going with the IMSA teams, I'm going with the WC teams. So stay tuned at the interpersonal battle between me and Joe, everyone. And now looking at LMP3, the brand new class to the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, we have 2 different chassis with Ligier and Duquesne. We have 7 entries with some recognizable names. Gabby Chavez and Ryan Norman were well known to fans who follow Road to Indy, and these 2 drivers won the Michelin Pilot Challenge Championship last season in TCR. Joao Barbosa trying to find redemption after getting dropped from Mustang Sampling race in the Cadillac. Colin Braun and John Bennett getting the gang back together at Core Autosport with Matt McMurray on the team. A pair of 2 former IndyCar drivers, Spencer Piggott and Oliver Askew. Longtime GTA's Jerome Bleekemolen's also in the class. Yes, very talented drivers in LMP3, but the cars are almost similar to GTLM in lap times, which leaves some people concerned about what will happen in the race. And back when we had the LMPC class prototype challenge, I'm sure a lot of people remember that. We saw several problems with them and prototype challenge in GTLM, and they were like interfering with each other's battles. Do you think we should expect the same for LMP3 at Daytona, where they'll be causing some problems to the GTLM cars?
Potentially. I mean, after we saw what happened, that tends to be an indicator. Of course, now that you have a full 24 hours to do the race, and you don't have that rush expectation with a shorter distance race. So there is a potential for that occurring, but it's going to be really interesting to see how all the drivers, especially I think the first few hours of this race, I think it's going to be relatively calm. It's once we get towards the winding stage, especially the nighttime, that's where I think we might see some issues.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting when we see the amateur rated drivers in those cars, because as we know in sports car racing we have driver ratings bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. The drivers who are more on the higher end of the FIA driver rating rating. I think they'll be a little bit ahead of the GTLM cars, but when the AM-rated drivers get in the cars, I think it might be a little bit of an issue for the GTLM car because they're going to be a little bit more slower than their pro-rated drivers. But yeah, but certainly it's going to be interesting with the addition of LMP3. And yeah, we do have a comment right here from a viewer saying he wants to see WC do well, but he agrees with Joe, thinking that IMSA will win. And I'm still sticking by that. WC is going to win the LMP2 battle. And now looking at GTLM, we have a 6-car grid, 2 entries from Corvette Racing. Corvette has 2 new drivers. Nick Tandy left Porsche to replace Oliver Gavin. Marcel Fassler got dropped from the endurance lineup and replaced by Formula E driver Alexander Sims. BMW team RLL returns with a 2-car program, but they won't run the full season. Only focus on the Enduros this year. The Risi Competizione Ferrari is back with a solid lineup for the Prancing Horse with James Calato, Alessandro Periguidi, Davide Rigon, and Jules Goonan. And we have 1 privateer Porsche, the number 79 WeatherTech entry, led by Cooper McNeil, and 3 Porsche factory drivers, Jimmy Bruni, Kevin Estre, and Richard Leeds. Despite their 6-car grid for the 24-hour race, should we expect the same fierce competition that GTLM typically provides, or is it going to be really spread out?
I think it'll be fierce competition, especially with some of the Porsches. But definitely, I think we might see it where you're going to have a division where you're going to have the fierce competition, and then the rest sort of spread out, just trying to fight for a good position. Especially if some of the lead pack runners have bad luck.
Yeah, definitely. You always want to follow GTLM, as I mentioned earlier. Is the GTLM's always produced some incredible battles, and I think it would be absolutely amazing for a 6-car class when the sun comes up tomorrow morning. If we have most of those cars on the lead lap and within striking distance of the class victory. And looking back at the Proton competition, WeatherTech Porsche, how challenging is it going to be for the privateer entry going up against the factory-backed programs of Corvette and BMW?
It is challenging because a lot of times the factory, of course, they'll have the latest, newest updates, equipment, and everything. Where a privateer team, they'll get essentially the car, they'll get the same, I would say, specs and everything, but it's very similar to how in other motorsports, especially like MotoGP, you have the factory teams, the customer teams. The customer teams might be a little bit more outdated. They don't have all the technical notes, whereas the factory team, much more resources to go out there and try to perform and get that win.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be exciting for Cooper McNeil and WeatherTech moving up to the GTLM class this year. And the lucky thing for Cooper, he has 3 really fast Porsche factory guys in that car with Bruni, Esther, and Leeds, some of the best and fastest drivers in GT racing. So I'm sure they're definitely gonna take the fight to Corvette, BMW, and also Risi Competizione is going to be in the mix as well. And now our final class, GT Daytona, GTD, we have a 19-car field set for a fierce battle, 9 manufacturers, and it's very diverse. 3 Lamborghinis. We have Paul Miller Racing in the world famous GRT Grasser Racing Team, well known for GT3 racing all around the world. Yeah, they're going to be running a 2-car program. And then we have 4 Porsches, 1 Pfaff Motorsports, Wright Motorsports, Team TGM, and Team Hardpoint, Earl Bamber Motorsport. And we have the 2 Lexus from Aim Vassar Sullivan, 2 Ferraris, of course, the Scuderia Corsa, 2 Aston Martins, Harder Racing Team. I know it was a really disappointing ending to the race of them last year. I remember during the nighttime hours, they had a hard crash on the front stretch. I'm sure they're definitely going to be looking for redemption this time around. And then a team from the World Endurance Championship, TF Sport, entering the other Aston Martin. Then we have 3 Mercedes Allegra Motorsports, Windward Racing stepping up from the Michelin Pilot Challenge, and Sun Energy One Racing. Kenny Habul's team is going to be returning. We're going to have a solo Audi NTE Sport. We're going to have IndyCar driver J.R. Hildebrand behind the wheel of that Audi. 1 Acura, Magnus Racing is going to be fielding that car, and then 1 BMW, Turner Motorsport, the longtime stalwarts of BMW. Do you fear that the addition of the GTD Pro class next year will have a huge impact on such a deep Pro-Am field that we have today?
Yes, I do have that concern, and especially when you look at the lineup and some of the names, I can already see some of these names that are in the class that will be tapped for the GT Pro class, especially when we have factory teams in GTD. You're going to want a driver like Jack Cosworth, Colton Herta, all of them in there. So the GTAM class, I feel, will start to see some of that drain as the drivers go to GT Pro. I still think GTAM will still be pretty strong overall. It's a very popular class. It's something where I think a lot of drivers enjoy. So even though I don't anticipate more than like 4 at the most factory teams. I'm anticipating maybe between 3-2 factory teams, but I don't think we're going to see a huge strain compared to like if there was another class that was going to have the same division.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting to see how many factory back teams are we gonna have in the GTD Pro class. And Joe, after you said that, I have a follow up question that I want to ask you. We know Corvette Racing has a C8R GTE car right now, and with the rules of GTLM being discontinued, Corvette Racing is gonna have to make a decision. Do you think that we are gonna see Corvette Racing build a C8R GT3 car to remain in IMSA next season? And what does that mean and what's that's going to mean for their participation at Le Mans in the future, especially since GT3 cars are not allowed at the moment?
That's a really good question. I think when it comes to Corvette, they're going to really have to do some thinking about where do they want to be overall. With Le Mans, I do feel like Le Mans, especially as we're seeing like hypercars, some of these new, more diversely fueled cars, we're not just sticking to petrol. We're seeing hybrids. We're seeing hydrogen cars being tested. I think that's something that Corvette will want to stick with that route as well, especially in future development for GM overall. Now, that's going to be really interesting because I could see the incentive to be with GTE, but especially with Le Mans, that is their one very international presence. I see where they will want to keep that. It's really going to be interesting to see how they respond.
Yeah, Corvette's gonna have a lot of decisions to make over the next few months, especially when they're designing their future. I mentioned they're looking at LMDH and also they're looking at GT3 as well. Yes, so if they go to GT3, they'll be able to stay in IMSA, but they won't be able to go to Le Mans unless the FIA World Endurance Championship and the ACO decides to change the regulations for GTD racing, and that's definitely a story we'll be following in the upcoming months. And there's a lot of talented drivers in GTD, but we don't have the time to go through every single driver lineup. So I'll just name a handful. Brian Sellers and Madison Snow lead the charge once again for Paul Miller Racing with an unchanged driver lineup that includes Corey Lewis and Andrea Caldarelli. Vassar Sullivan has a quick lineup with the likes of Jack Hawksworth, Aaron Talese, Oliver Gavin, who retired from Corvette Racing, and Zach Veach starting a new career after IndyCar. Magnus Racing switching to Acura this year, bringing speed with regulars John Potter and Andy Lally. Spencer Pompelli and a fourth driver who really knows his car well, Mario Farnbacher. TS Sport, a team from the World Endurance Championship, filled in an Aston Martin for Maxwell Root, Charlie Eastwood, Richard Westbrook, Westy, and Ben Keaton. And speaking of Ben Keaton, he'll be pulling double duty in two different classes once again here in GTD with the TS Sport Aston Martin and LMP2 driving the number 52 Orica for PR1 Matheson Motorsports. Catherine Legg and Christina Nielsen make their IMSA return in a Porsche for Team Hardpoint EBM. The Turner Motorsport BMW brought back Bill Lauberlin and Robbie Foley with Aiden Reed joining the lineup, which also includes IndyCar star Colton Herta. And if you've been following GTLM in recent years, you know about Bam Thor, Earl Bamber, and Lawrence Van Thor. When the Porsche factory team ended its program, it meant Bam Thor would have to go in a different direction this year. Bamber has his own EBM team partnering with Hardpoint, while Van Thor is going to be racing with Pfaff Motorsports. Joe, after working so well in GTLM the last few years as one of sports cars' most notable driver pairings, how odd will it be to see Bam Thor as rivals on the track this year?
Oh, that's going to be really interesting to see them as rivals. It's something where I didn't anticipate. And then, of course, when everything essentially started coming out that they were going to be now racing rivals, it's like, wow, this is something where I know fans have talked about if the two were to be racing against each other, what would happen. And we're going to find out in this 24 hours of Daytona. It's going to be really exciting to follow.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at Bam Thor with GTD having a pro class next year, there might be an opportunity for them to race in that class and reunite. And unfortunately, we're getting close to the end of our program. So Joe, it's that time for our second pick a winner for 2021.
That's right. It is time for pick a winner. We encourage all our viewers in the chat room. Let us know who you think is going to win. Definitely on Twitter, use the hashtag pick a winner. It's going to be really exciting. We'll start with Erin. Who do you think is going to win the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona?
Well, I think overall there's probably not much question that we're going to see DPI win the race. There with 7 entries in DPI, I think there's very little chance that one of them won't take the overall. Of those teams, I personally think that the Chip Ganassi Cadillac has a really good chance. Magnuson and Van der Zandt Dixon is their kind of a dream team. Personally, I'd really like to see the Meyer-Shank Acura driven by Dane Cameron and Oliver Plau on Pablo Montoya and AJ Allmendinger. They're also really strong. I'd really like to see an Acura win the 24 hours. And then if I could, my friends and my focus are all in GTD. So, of course, I would really like to see Christina Nielsen and Catherine Legg succeed and win here at Daytona. I think they've got a great team with Team Hardpoint behind them, and with Earl Bamber and Rob Ferriel as their co-drivers. I think they actually could have a chance with that GT3R. And I also would really love to see, and I think they've obviously showed by getting GTD pole that they've got the speed. The Turner Motorsports guys, Robbie Foley and Bill Oberlin with Colton Herta and Aiden Reed. I think that could be really fun with Colton coming over from IndyCar. We know he's got the speed. I know they were kind of handicapped last year by a fuel situation, not having not being able to go as long on their fuel as some of the other cars were able to. So I don't know. We'll see if they've been able to figure that out this year. So it may come down to strategy for them, but they've certainly shown that they have the pace to win in GTD.
Yeah, and those are definitely a great set of drivers right there. I've been going back and forth with my picks for the overall win, and I'm gonna go with my initial gut instinct. I think the number 48 Action Express Racing Allied Financial Cadillac DPI of Jimmy Johnson, Simon Pagenaud, Mike Rockefeller, and Kamui Kobayashi will win this year's Rolex 24 at Daytona.
Very exciting picks. I know when it comes to the Rolex 24 hours, I'm going to go with a little bit of a underdog, but definitely I think got the equipment with the Cadillac DPI. I'm going to go with Jimmy Johnson. That Allied Cadillac is going to pull off the win, and it's going to just add to his career of motorsports, win after win, accomplishment after accomplishment. Definitely going to be really exciting. We encourage everyone in the chat room, Twitter, everywhere, tell us who you think is going to win the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. And here is the Rolex 24 Hours broadcasting schedule today. Of course, the race gets kicked off underway 3:30 p.m. on your local NBC station for the first hour, and then going over to NBC Sports, followed by NBC Sports Gold, back on NBC Sports overnight, back on NBC Sports Gold, and then we have NBC Sports Network again, followed by the conclusion on the NBC Network. Definitely encourage everyone, be sure to take the time to watch 24 Hours of Daytona. Is one of the best races. I know year after year, I try my best to watch every few once in a while, especially in the nighttime. Of course, being the Pacific West Coast, especially when I was in Alaska, it was really easy to catch the start early in the morning, see the night racing. But then it was like if I wanted to see the finish live, I would have to get up early. Kobe, how excited are you for this race? I know we covered a lot. And definitely encourage everyone in our chat room. If you have questions, comments, start sharing it with right now before we go off the air.
Yeah, Joe, definitely looking forward to covering another 24-hour race at Daytona. I'm gonna be live tweeting most of the races, especially providing the hourly updates. Yeah, so really looking forward to doing this once again and doing the best I can to represent everyone here at GRID Network and the Podium Finish as well. And if all the fans out there are getting ready for the race, I definitely suggest for everyone to get all your shopping done before the race, especially if you need food. You have to stock up on your food. Make sure you have a ton of snacks ready for the race, and during the nighttime hours, definitely have that coffee on standby because I've tried to stay up really late to watch those endurance races, but I just can't make it out, and I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna make it this year either. So definitely make sure you get everything done beforehand, so you can stay in and watch all 24 hours of racing, because it's certainly going to be one exciting show.
It's definitely going to be an exciting show. I know a lot of people are excited, and I feel especially with everything that's gone on in 2020, the pandemic and everything, this year's race seems a little bit more exciting. Yes, of course, there's some social distance restrictions here and there. But it feels like as we're now approaching the start of the regular motorsport calendar, 24 hours of Daytona. Then we're going to have NASCAR is going to come back. After NASCAR, we're going to have Formula E, Formula One, IndyCar, and then we're going to be back in the full swing of racing. So I definitely think it's going to be really exciting to see this race. It's just going to be something where at the end, definitely encourage everyone Wednesday, Grid Tonight, where we're going to do a recap of this event.
We invite all viewers to subscribe to GRID Network here all season long with IMSA programming and motorsports news. Be sure to check out our Patreon if you have time. We really appreciate calling our first Patreon supporter. Also, check out Pablo. GRID Network viewers will get a 10% discount and be sure to find some goodies for your furry friend. And we definitely want to thank Erin Vogel for participating on our program today. Erin, thank you so much, and we really appreciate it hearing a perspective from a sports car racing driver.
Thank you, Joe and Kobe, for having me on the show. It's been really fun to chat about the 24 hours of Daytona. And if you guys are interested, I'm going to be making announcements about my 2021 plans the week after the Rolex 24 is over. So follow me at Erin Vogel Racing on Instagram to be the first to know about my next year's plans.
Yeah, Erin, we're very excited to see what you're going to be doing in 2021, and also looking forward to a long 24 hours of racing at Daytona. And for just Samaniego sports car racer Erin Vogel, I'm Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. Grab some snacks, coffee, and enjoy 24 long hours of sports car racing.
Joe Samaniego here. Want to invite you to go check out Pablo. Pablo is a dog clothing and accessory company based in Austria. 10% of each of your purchases goes to helping dogs in need, whether it's homeless, sick, or ill dogs. This is one of the reasons why we support it. Kiska here is a rescue dog from rural Alaska and our GRID office dog. We care about our furry buddies, and we know you do as well. Definitely check out pawbless.com. There's a link on the video description, and by clicking on that link, you get a 10% discount on your purchase as well.